California, making the most significant step in American history toward granting its African-American descendants of slaves reparations.
It's substantiating the claim for reparations for the African-American or American freedmen community on the municipal, state, and federal level.
On Wednesday afternoon, the state government releasing the report of a task force formed by the state legislature to study the history of slavery, the state's sponsorship of it, and its costs on Californians today.
We made the historic decision to affirm what we called lineage-based eligibility. So what that means is a community of eligibility will comprise of African Americans who are descendants of free and enslaved Black people who were living in the United States prior to 1900.
The group proposing that the state now offer reparations for direct descendants of slaves now living in California, but also, for instance, individuals outside of California whose ancestors were harmed by the state's policies.
Go ahead. I don't think I've called on you in a while. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Bree. Question for you about this report out of California on reparations. I was wondering if the president has seen it and if he would use it to guide any sort of executive action, since I think the last thing he did on reparations was say that he supported the study that Congress is potentially wanting to
So
pass.
his stance on reparations and supporting the study hasn't changed. I have not seen the California report, but his personal, his stance, policy stance has not changed on reparation.
Listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, the win, you need our energy. You gon' sit, listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Welcome to Reset Race. This evening's episode is going to be about Biden and where we as Black folks kind of are with him. And we'll flesh it out deeper, but I don't feel like doing a 25-minute intro. So I am Sam, AKA the Khaleesi. John missed my new fire face for my Apple Watch. It's like when you look at it, just lights up in flames. It's fucking awesome. So I'm so happy to be here. And next up, Morgan.
Hey, y'all. My name is Morgan Malachi. I got so many AKAs, but leave that for another day. You can find me on Twitter at CaliTastUs. Yeah, let's get into the show.
All hail King Killmonger. It is I, King of the Negroes, leader of the resistance, leader of the engagement gang. Like, share, subscribe, get your issues into the algorithm. That is the only way this happens. We're about to get into the Great Exodus, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. It's gonna be fun.
All right, they call me Mud. You can find me on my social media at of Lineage. That's OF Lineage. I am the creator of Bitter Dose TV. Let's go ahead and get into the show. All right. Do you guys just want me to go ahead and play the video?
Of course.
Yeah.
There are big existential problems like, saving American democracy at home and also abroad. And then there are the on-the-ground problems that Americans struggle with every single day. Inflation is one of them. It's at a 40-year high. Gas prices are surging. COVID numbers are still rising. Yes, we are still in a pandemic. And a school shooting massacre that reminds Americans every single day of President Biden's inability to get Congress to pass gun safety reform. In an exclusive NBC News report, sources say that lately, President Biden feels like he just can't catch a break. And that anxiety is rippling through the Democratic Party in an election year when Democrats are fighting to control the Congress after the midterms. Yamiche Alcindor is here to help us understand the politics and the White House response. She's a Washington correspondent for NBC News and the anchor of Washington Week on PBS. So, Yamiche, a recent poll found that 71% of Americans disapprove of how the president is handling the cost of living. So lay out for us how much of a threat these really bread and butter everyday issues are for the Democrats heading into the midterm elections.
These are incredible threats to the Democrats. These are incredible challenges for President Biden. Everyone who knows anyone in this country right now understands that when people are thinking about sort of their mood in the country, they're thinking about how are they surviving and thriving. And right now, with inflation very high, with gas prices on neon signs every day reminding people just how high gas prices have gotten, you really do get the sense that there are so many Americans who are wondering, how can this economy work better for me? And when I talk to White House officials, they're very, very aware that at the end of the day, the buck is going to stop with the president. The president has said over and over again that he is going to tackle this issue. But historically, presidents haven't been able to really do that much about inflation. Going all the way back to LBJ or Nixon or Ford, president after president has tried to deal with inflation and it has not really worked out. But now you hear Democrats, especially in this new article that you just pointed out, you have Representative Murphy of Florida saying that really she has not heard a clear, succinct plan from the White House about how to tackle inflation. And again, that's a Democrat saying that. So that tells you where the Democratic Party is and also the challenges ahead as the midterms near.
One of the fascinating things about this moment, as it in terms of issues like inflation or gas prices, that there's not that much the president can do about these issues, right? They can persist even if the president takes action, right? I'm just talking.
I need a break from the Negro apologists.
Word, I hear you.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead. Kick it off.
Well, I think that part of the problem is that they expect the Federal Reserve to deal with this. And those of us who dig into the MNT stuff, we understand that the Federal Reserve has very limited tools to deal with this. All they can do is mess with the interest rates, but really, if they want to do something about inflation, they would have to take measures through Congress. This is not really communicated to the public. They're not really being completely honest about how all this shit works. So Biden's gonna have to take this shit on the chin. The Republicans aren't going to work with him. He got scary Democrats that aren't going to work with him on that. So he's pretty much fucked on this inflation issue.
Yeah, because nobody wants to step in and be the failure. I think this is funny. I mean, it's bad though, because of the gas prices and everything. But again, this is an example of the walls closing in so many ways.
Yeah, we're just at a moment where it's just when I'm watching this segment, all I can hear in my head is, well, what do you want the president to do? You can't really fix it. And, Congress has no idea what they should do either. So, whatever. This is terrible. Where is the expertise in our government? Has anybody noticed the more you pay attention to how the government works, the more you realize there's just a bunch of idiots in charge? Oh, it's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like amateur hour. It's been that way. We've just grown up, so we see it now. That's how I look at it.
The definition of inflation, one of the simpler definitions of inflation is the amount of money in circulation in ratio to the goods and services. So what you had with COVID was you piled on the money, right? Because we wanted to keep markets liquid. We wanted to keep the economy going. But, because of COVID, the production of goods and services actually fell. So that ratio got very exacerbated, probably, at the fastest rate in history, probably not the amount in history, but at the fastest rate in history. And so that's what we're contending with. So when you look at what the Federal Reserve is trying to do, basically they're trying to pull money back out of circulation. How are they doing that? They're raising interest rates, which means they're disincentivizing new lending. The other thing that they're doing, and it starts on Wednesday, is they're reducing the assets on their balance sheet. So they're reducing the money supply. And we're trying to get supply chains, which were, the supply chain constraints from the lack of goods and services. We're trying to get supply chain constraints, fixed to a tolerable level. We don't know how the China lockdowns are going to affect that just yet. And so a lot of what Biden is talking about in this article is dealing with supply chain type issues and dealing with Congress and dealing with this kind of issue. The thing is what's the causation versus the correlation? Really, the Fed is in the driver's seat right now. And it's interesting to see Jerome Powell meeting with Joe Biden today, because you've just got to reduce that money supply, and they really can't control the supply chain constraints. And so it's all about creating demand destruction in the background. And look, the economists are now starting to talk about peak inflation. I was probably too early on this, but you've got things in the background. You've got soy and corn and, even oil hasn't taken out the war high. And you've got, cattle and hogs, and some of these prices are starting to break down in the background. Fertilizer. It's just that there's such a lag effect. And so that's the thing, is they can't do it tomorrow.
We know that the president has sort of limited influence when it comes to inflation. Like you said, it's about the Fed. Is the Fed partially to blame? Because they sort of took their time when it came to raising interest rates.
I mean, I think that there was no model for COVID, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of this also goes back to the response to COVID. And I always say they should have shut everything down and sent people checks for a few months. And we would have been past this shit. Enough people would have been able to go back to work. COVID wouldn't have been as bad. And you wouldn't be seeing these supply chain issues.
So I want to push back a little bit on that one, Mud. I actually prefer Irony's approach, or a hybrid of the two, which is, because I don't remember if Irony was we should do both. So we should have sent checks to people, but we should have also started doing massive retrofitting of the country. And that could have been done with social distancing and all kinds of things. So we still would have been we still would have had things moving in the supply chain. We would have shut down everything. But we would have, perfect example, schools, right? We could have retrofitted all the schools where they would have been set up to actually bring students back. Irene was talking about repurposing malls and all types of other shit. So we could have had, 10 students to a class or 8 students to a class. Imagine how that just would have revolutionized education. There was a lot of things that could have been done. I guess this hits with the whole federal jobs guarantee thing. So MMT, federal jobs guarantee, those two things, if they would have deployed those things during, when COVID first came, I think we would have been in a much better position now.
Well, I think I'm talking about I definitely agree with that, but I don't think the political will would have been there for that. I think he could have, instead of just those couple of checks, they could have worked something out where, they did it for, 3 to 4 months, and then started to bring people back to work. Just the 2 checks was not enough. And, you shut everything down. let people sit at home and, except for like, food and stuff like that. Of course, like there were going to have to be some things that remained going, but like you just set it up to where people could stay at home, they could get food and just wait out COVID. Doing this whole we're half working, we're half not, saying thing, it just prolonged this shit in America. Now, of course, I also think, we probably should have shut down all travel and did all of that type of stuff. But, like there's things that could have been that either way, we're agreeing that there's more that could have been done to prevent this situation that we're in right now.
Yeah, for COVID, it kind of showed the underdevelopment of our government for like technology purposes and stuff like that. Like they're still running on like a 1960s system. So when you saw like all the states having backups for unemployment, even the states and the federal government, like a lot of the technology is obsolete. So even if
Florida
they
was
wanted
a
to divvy
mess.
it out,
Florida was a mess.
Yeah, like my state was a mess, Pennsylvania. Even if they wanted to divvy it out, they made a whole new system for unemployment. It was still messed up. And it was to the point where they should have just kept the old system. So what I saw was just like what we think is an efficient system is really obsolete. And federal workers in certain branches will tell you it's by design too, because the government is scared of getting hacked in that way. So they don't update a lot of systems just on the strength of that. So
that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. What we were seeing was really an obsolete system that's just not set up to actually help the people.
I think we should have gotten more out of the pandemic than we did. Like, they say never let a tragedy go to waste or something like that.
Yeah.
Like there was just they could have just changed everything. And you said there would have been political will. There was political will in the country. Like people could have fought for their constituents to get resources to their communities. They just chose not to.
I mean, but you gotta also understand, like, there were states where motherfuckers were like fighting mask mandates and showing up to the Capitol just because the governor shut shit down. Like,
that's because they didn't pay them. Like you said, if you would have paid them.
I think that was part of it, but some of it is just that like old school white man, I hate the government because the government helps the Negroes, type thing going on. Like, it wasn't rational. That's all I'm saying. So I think like there is something in this country where like motherfuckers do not want this shit to like advance in certain ways, and because they don't want the government to like be involved.
Isn't that the essence of America though? Don't Europeans talk about like in Germany, they say they stop, like if you're at the corner waiting for the light to change, but there's no cars coming, like you'll walk, right? If it's a red light. But over there, that's a no. Like, so I knew that when this stuff was happening, man, America's not disciplined enough. They don't follow any rules. Like even that corona shit, that was going to get spread because motherfuckers are dirty and they don't want to fucking follow any rules. Like I already knew it, man. I was like, let me get the fuck out of Dodge. Like, because like we see it. We see it with breakouts of foodborne illnesses and all that shit. Dirty motherfuckers.
I guess we can go back to this video. Let's go ahead, Matt.
About these issues, right? They can persist even if the president takes action, right? I'm talking specifically about gas prices. Like President Trump always loved to tout the economy, the stock market and gas prices as if he contributed to those things. So speak to how much of this is a messaging piece in terms of the administration talking about what they are doing to tackle these issues, and how much of it is a a problem of the fact that they can't actually do all that much to solve the problems in the immediate future?
I say it's the two-pronged issue that you just laid out there, Serlina. It is both an issue of messaging in that Americans want to feel like President Biden and Democrats in particular, that they have a handle on the economy. And there is some frustration in the Democratic Party, people that I've talked to, Democratic leaders and lawmakers who are going on the record with NBC News saying, we need to hear a better plan from President Biden. We need to hear a better plan from Democrats. The other issue, though, is that there are some action items. When you think about the gas prices, of course, you had the president release millions of barrels of oil from the reserves. But there's also some reporting here that President Biden himself was frustrated when it came to the baby formula shortage. He was, in some ways, really complaining that he didn't get briefed about that early enough. And this was a problem that was basically in the making for months. So there is also some issues here when it comes to mothers, frankly, being angry and fathers being angry that when they go to the stores, the shelves where baby formula is supposed to be was empty. And that, in some ways, by President Biden and Democrats' own admission, is a little bit on their shoulders.
That's a very fair point. So let's talk about the staffing here, because NBC News is reporting that President Biden, as you said, is pressing aides for a more compelling message, a sharper strategy, complained that he wasn't informed sooner about the baby formula shortage. I mean, is he right? Lay out what all of this means in terms of some of the staff shakeups we've been reading about over the past couple of days, where some senior members are leaving the administration and some new people are going to come in.
So White Houses always have turnover. And Zerlina, we remember the sort of whiplash of turnover that we saw in the Trump years. It's not quite like that, but you do see a lot of high profile people leaving this administration. You see a lot of people also talking about leaving. There's some reporting that Ron Klain, the chief of staff, might be leaving. There has never been a woman or a person of color in that job, and that might be the next thing. There are some names being flipped around, like Anita Dunn, who is working at the White House right now in the high level communications and strategy position. There's also Susan Rice, who is a senior advisor. So there are some people that are in the administration who are also very, very close to President Biden. Steve Ricchetti is another one.
What does it matter if we put a person of color in that space if they're not doing anything for Black American people? Like, are we going to pretend like we didn't just have Jean-Pierre roll her eyes at the thought of a conversation about reparations as press secretary?
Go ahead. I don't think I've called on you in a while. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Bree. Question for you about this report out of California on reparations. I was wondering if
the president has seen it.
That's seen around the world?
Yeah, it's very disrespectful. Very disrespectful. Like, I don't see how it can get any more blatant than that.
I find it interesting that they're not mentioning that like a lot of these staffers that are leaving are Black, but they're talking about how a replacement is going to be Black. Like,
Might be people of color.
Yeah, well, might be people of color. Like, yeah. So it seems like they're providing a little bit of cover here. So they're not telling the audience, like, they're trying to entice, I guess, Black people with the idea that, you know, there might be a new Black hire, but they're not also letting them know that a lot of Black staffers don't seem to be happy with this situation in the Biden administration. And I was reading it, and it seemed like some of them were talking about like pay and like, you know, not being able to like afford living in like DC and all of this stuff like that being issues. And that goes into a deeper thing, because I don't know, it seems like those positions are not necessarily supposed to be, you know, your money makers. Those are just supposed to be things that you have on your resume, right? And that's supposed to lead to higher positions where you can actually start making the money after, you know, you're done with this administration. So it's easier for white people that have a certain wealth level and certain comfort economically because they have
color.
Yeah.
Let's be real, because a lot of these people of color are very strong, come from very strong upper middle class families.
That's true. So it goes back to the whole thing about generational wealth and how that even affects us being able to participate in government on a level to where we can actually influence it. So like it all comes back to economics and how this society is designed for us to not be in a position of influence ultimately. Because even if it were set up to where, we get representation and those people are really going to fight for us, by design, they can't even maintain the lifestyle to be in that position. You know what I'm saying? So there's always a way to make sure that we are neutralized.
Yep. And it's in every industry. There is a restaurant downtown called Tools Garden. And they said at the time, it's probably like 2000, I want to say 15, 14. They said it was the best restaurant in the city. I tried to get in there. I'm a 2 Bell Award winning chef. And I just wanted a prep cook job. They wouldn't let me in. So it was like an employment scam where they were like having people come in stage for as long as you wanted to work for free and never hiring you. So I got in there because I got curious. All of the white boys, it was the whole staff, which is nothing but white boys. And they said that they had to prep 8 hours out the day, 10 hours out the day. But they needed 10 hours of work, but they would only clock in for 7. Now you tell me who the hell Black
I worked in a
American
John Sedler restaurant. This is my life. Go ahead.
can afford to do that, right? And so when you're in those kitchens like that and you get those positions, that's how you get those executive chef, corporate head chef jobs. And that's how they keep you out. And I just saw it. It was just blatant. Now fast forward 3 years later, I advocated to get the tip protection bill passed, and there was like federal guidelines about unpaid wages, and some people started filing a lawsuit, and that restaurant had to pay out all those back hours. And I know there were a couple white boys that didn't even bother because they had money. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that getting ripped off in the restaurant thing is real and crazy.
So you can't mingle. You have no extra money to go out and do the back end things that you need to do, especially in like politics. You're not going to that bar. So you're just not in the social mix. And we all know with business and jobs, that's a social thing. So if you can't parlay, if you can't politic, how are you going to get up? That's simple.
Money begets money. Very true.
Yep. Morgan, you're not lying. I was just thinking about being able to just live out there, but you're talking about the other element of it. Like you have to be in the mix. You have to go to the dinners. You have to go to, the parties. You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to do all of that stuff. Just to build those relationships to like be able to be like, hey, I need a favor on this, on this initiative. I need a favor here, like, and this is kind of like the legacy admissions with colleges and shit like that. It's all set up for, it's a generational thing, and it's always been that way. And like we've kind of been tricked into thinking like, yo, like working hard and getting rich within your lifetime, like everyone's a self-made millionaire and all this goofy shit. Nah, it's like generations looking out for each other like over and over again. Like it's really what's that shit called? The
Old boys club.
The
Good
old boys club.
Yeah,
It really is that. Like it's the old boys club. Like motherfuckers like looking out for each other, and it's just passed on generation after generation, like building on each other. Like it's so we are set up already because we were blocked out for so many centuries, And now we're still at the point where we're just trying to catch up, and everything is changing around us. Everything is advancing. We're still trying to fit into the economy of the 1990s, and that shit is disappearing. You know what I'm saying? So
It's gone. It's gone.
yeah,
It's not even disappearing. It's gone. If you
yeah,
ain't in it, if you ain't in it, you ain't in it.
yeah, basically. So I mean, and this is why it seems like we could just never get over the hump as a people. So it all comes back to reparations. Like every single time I think about this shit, if America doesn't find a way to fit us into this economy to where we can function like every other citizen, I mean, we're doomed. All right, y'all want to go back to this video? Is Joey having problems?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
There's just very little substance between these two.
Yeah. I mean, this
Right.
is MSNBC. This is what we get with them.
Well,
I
and
did
I
read over
guess
that.
sorry, Joey, go ahead.
I was just saying, I did read over that Political article, and it confirms everything Mud was saying. If I could just read this quick quote, they say, they brought in a ton of Black people generally to start without ever establishing an infrastructure to retain them or help them be successful. Said the third current Black White House official. Let's see. If there's no clear infrastructure on how to be successful, you just become invisible in this space that you would be as you become just as invisible in this space than you would be if you were not in it. Black faces in high places.
All right, do you guys want to get back to it?
So sorry, I'm just keep short, and I know I'm like, this is what kind of constitutes as news in the MSNBC world. What do you want I know I already said it, but what do you want the president to do? And you guys are on your own. And then, like you said, everybody's leaving the job, but we're not saying that all the Black people are fleeing. So, hey, Mud, why don't we skip back to the other? Now we can go to the TYT one. Let's go back.
Oh, you don't even want to finish it, see what the last little bit is?
You can. Let's rock it through.
All
But
right.
I feel like it's gonna be more of the same.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's happening here is that President Biden, and you can see it in real time, President Biden often says one thing, and then you see his aides sort of trying to clean it up. You think about the fact that he said in 9 words, President Putin needs to leave office, and aides really trying, working overtime to say, well, that's not really what he meant. Same thing with Taiwan. The president comes out and says, you know what, we would defend Taiwan if China tried to invade it like Ukraine got invaded by Russia. Then you see aides coming out. That is frustrating just to watch, because you know that the White House is in some ways really trying to be on the same page. But it's also frustrating for President Biden because his bread and butter has been that sort of tough talking, straight talking style that he has. And you have a White House that is trying to, in some ways, insulate him from being called, off record or being called off policy by the official U.S. policy. But you also have someone who's saying, I'm leading with my heart, and what I say is what I mean. So the staffing issue is one to really, really watch here, because you can see just outside how the messaging is going, that there is a real tension between what President Biden wants to say, how clear he wants to be, and then his aides really trying to stick to a different kind of message.
It's fascinating. President Biden was like, I said what I said. It's just it's fascinating developments. Yamiche Elsener, thank you for that great reporting and for being here today. Please stay safe.
So basically, Biden is doing the same shit Trump was doing, and you see how they cleaned that shit up.
She even throw a little A-D-E in there to spice it up, a little razzle dazzle. I said what I said.
So I just watched this segment and I learned nothing. I learned there's always staff shakeups. I learned that the president can't do nothing to help me, and that I should vote for him in 2022. Okay.
I learned that Biden is not above using Black women to distract from his own failures, because that's consistently what he's been doing. Well, I hired the first Black this.
I mean, you signed up to work for Jim Crow Joe. I don't have sympathy for any of these people. Like, how many times do you see the writings on the wall? And I don't know if these people are delusional. They think they're going to make it better. When we talk about
I'm
empathetic,
special, Morgan.
I
I
think
am the special Negro. I
you
am the
the
special Negress. You can't tell me that my super magic powers are not going to get me where I need to be.
yeah, well, you just got 10, 20 years taken off your life by signing up for that job. So congratulations.
I disagree though. I like Biden used black people to get in office. He owes those positions to black people. Those people like deserve the careers they have. If for nothing
I
else,
just want
then
them
we
to
got
work
to
for
be.
us.
I agree.
But I
like
get you.
this just speaks to like the failure of his administration. Like it was all just symbolism. But he'll keep saying, "Well, I nobody's done more than me. My White House is the most diverse, but not really. Like they're there, but they're just there."
And a lot of them don't even be us. Maybe not us. Jean-Pierre.
Oh, she running cover for him too, talking about well, he's hired the most black women, and then talking about
Yeah, you
herself.
saw her roll her eyes on reparations too.
He said what he said.
Now let's get the real story on what's going on with the black staffers. All right, let's rock.
Some black aides have coined the exodus as Blaxit, and that is not to be confused with that messy woman's Blexit. Yes, stay focused. So what Politico said is that at least 21 black staffers have left the White House since late last year and are planning to leave soon. Some of those who remain say it's no wonder why. They describe a work environment with little support from their superiors and fewer chances for promotion. That sounds like something that many people of color and women face. Working in particularly the private sector. So it's very unfortunate that that also seemed to be
She
going
already
on in the
failed her
public
fucking
sector.
mission.
And one of the
You already failed. It literally says black staffers are leaving the White House in mass, and you talk about people of color. Why are you here? Stop hiring these negresses to do nothing. I don't like POC in my politics. I don't like fish in my gumbo, and I don't like POC in my politics.
They just keep doing that with a straight face. Like, I don't like, why do you guys keep doing that? I feel like all of these people are getting paid to do this.
100% they are, because they keep doing it. Like with the Buffalo shooting, they'll call it like an example of racial hatred. They'll never speak about whose race was targeted though.
And they throw that POC word right up in there. Like it makes it better, like hot sauce or something.
Then go ahead, Mud. All right.
working in particularly the private sector. So it's very unfortunate that that's also seemed to be going on in the public sector. And one of the first big exits that we saw was back in December when Harris's senior advisor and chief spokesperson, Simone Sanders, pictured here, announced her departure to go to MSNBC. Since then, Harris senior aides Tina Flournoy, Ashley Etten, and Vincent Evans and public engagement head Cedric Richmond have also left. Now, Politico goes on to list many others who have either left or are planning to leave in the coming weeks. And now that concerns have been raised among outside observers, well, they're pushing for diversification of ranks, like Spencer Overton. He was a professor of mine at G Law. And Overton is the president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, which tracks government staff diversity numbers. Now, Overton told Politico, quote, "I have heard about an exodus of black staffers from the White House, Blaxit, and I am concerned. Black voters accounted for 22% of President Biden's voters in November 2020. It's essential that black staffers are not only recruited to serve in senior, mid-level, and junior White House positions, but are also included in major policy and personnel decisions and have opportunities for advancement." That is huge and incredibly important. And as someone who specializes in making workplaces more inclusive and confronting issues like institutionalized racism, sexism, and so on, I can tell you that that is absolutely accurate. We need to have representation at all levels. You can't just sprinkle or pepper a few and then keep all the melanated people at the bottom of the ranks. That's just not how it works if you want to have success. Because the reality is you need to start treating black and brown people in your work ranks.
Stop, motherfucking stop.
Here we go.
Sorry.
Black and brown, huh?
Black staffers are leaving the White House en masse. Fuck you. Take Billie Holiday down. I just don't know what to do with y'all. Y'all just so useless.
She's just quoted somebody out of the Political article. Like it was maybe like 5 seconds ago. Anybody
Yeah,
catch
his name was Spencer Overton.
Spencer Overton. He gave her like the perfect script. All she had to do was read it. It said black, 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 black. And then like immediately after she stops quoting him, she goes into, well, sexism, transphobia, and all these other things. And I'm like, that's not what he was talking about. How did we get here? When did this become about black and brown?
Academia.
This shit is really disgusting.
It is.
Like,
I'm sick. I don't know who this broad is, but I don't like her already.
She said he was her professor. Okay. Like that Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, that's the first Black think tank in America. And they have, it's not just Mary Frances, there's a lot of people that came out that think tank. And even the guy that established it was literally specific for us. She's an idiot.
He couldn't possibly have been more clear about who he was talking about.
so this is the situation. We got the mainstream leftists who won't even mention that it's Black people leaving. And then we got the what is supposed to be the more radical leftists who like they'll say Black, but then they'll shift it and like confuse the issue to the point where it's no longer about Black people. And I'm not saying like this is like a high priority amongst Black folks, like that, you know, there's Black staffers in the White House and yada, yada, yada. But still, like, this is supposed to be something of interest for Black people, because this is like, well, why are so many Black people leaving? Like, we should be like getting to the bottom of this. And they want to make it about everything but a Black issue.
It's giving all lives matter.
And these are supposed to be the people fighting for us. This is supposed to be the side of the good. These are supposed to be the good guys.
Not on TYT.
But how about this though? These are their peers, like these Black staffers and these Black political pundits. Aren't they like peers? They probably see each other in bars, and she couldn't even stand up for him. This is ridiculous.
What they're essentially saying is that like Black issues don't matter unless they're in conjunction with someone else. That's unacceptable.
Especially when they need us to vote for them at 90% to win.
It's much like you treat the white men in the workplace. So they should be everywhere. They should have every opportunity. That's a given. So as much as Biden's efforts, it's definitely nice and all. At the same time, if they're not effective, what are you doing other than wasting our time? Dina.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, kind of the institutional, like we talked about institutional racism, right? Like redlining and all that kind of stuff. And I think that is here as well, because the idea of mentoring, right? There's not enough mentors. That's really how people succeed. And I can relate to that as a woman. I was in a big private law firm and there were really 2 female partners, like that's it. And one of them was so gracious to mentor, but it was really just up to whether or not those 2 can do it. So if there's not enough senior, Black staffers who can mentor, that makes a big effect. And also to the point that the article mentioned, how government employees get paid a lot less, right? The White House staffers get paid a lot less than if they did that same job in the private sector. And some people left because they were getting good opportunities, which is like great for them. But the idea is that if you don't come from generational wealth, you're not able to like stick it out in a job that pays so poorly. It's the idea of like rich people get richer, right? Because they can start their own business, because they don't depend on the money of, they can be more entrepreneurial because they're not living paycheck to paycheck. It's that kind of institutional that kind of needs, how do you address that? Because It is very hard to work in a government job and get paid so much less when you can get paid more doing your same job in a private sector. And that's not an easy thing to fix.
3 Black women, no substance. The white woman comes in and talks about the goddamn like issue at hand. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Just, it's a waste of Black skin. I'm so tired of you putting these negresses and Negroes in front of me, and they just don't be talking about nothing. They don't be talking about nothing that has to do with what's important to our people. Like you said, the white lady had to come in and tie it all together and give you a little history lesson, bring it to the front and go through and be like, this, and you just nothing. Black and brown, black and brown. This white lady, at least she didn't say it.
This is embarrassing. Like, how? This is the worst timeline. Like, how do you misunderstand the assignment so much that a white woman has to correct you? Like, I don't know what her ethnicity is. I don't know what this lady's background is. But like, if you Black in America and you understand anything, like, no white woman should have to break down like the history of Black people in America. What the fuck?
No, it's not. And especially because we know that Black and brown people tend to have more student loans than others, in part because of generational wealth and the lack thereof. Also, Black women.
Y'all trying me. Quit playing in my face, bitch. Quit playing in my face. Playing in my face.
So Black people are leaving the White House, right? Why is this a problem for brown people? Can anybody explain that to me? How does this impact brown people specifically? Because personally, I ain't met a brown person who cares. Black. Everybody say it with Black. If you're listening at home, just one time, Black. It's not that difficult.
All right, y'all, I'm gonna press play.
Also, Black women are the highest educated demographic in our nation, which means by virtue of that, we are going to have more student loans. And the fact is that if you want to serve your country, you also have the education for it. You are disincentivized by virtue of the fact that, again, as you mentioned, you are not going to be paid much. But on top of that, when you are facing glass ceilings, when there are limitations on you because you're a person of color, when your voice is not welcomed, valued, respected, and heard, as we say at Jennifer Brown Consulting, and when you just can't seem to rise, yet everyone else gets to rise, it does disincentivize you and it causes this kind of Blaxit situation. And so hopefully President Biden is listening to the experts and plans to make the changes necessary to ensure that people want to stay, that people do feel welcomed, valued, respected, and heard. Because we all know that our government will be all the better for it, especially having a White House that clearly and more visibly reflects the nation that it is set to serve.
People of color is an ethnic slur, and I want it abolished, along with BIPOC and any other fucking iterations of dumb shit. We can start there. So we have watched 2 segments of so-called Black media mainstream, and it's trash. It's a lot of Black and brown politics. So I need to see all the footage on Telemundo of them saying negro y moreno. Like, we're not doing that anymore. Black people have real Black ass issues that need to be addressed. And one of them is you owe us reparations, those of us who descend from American chattel slavery. So you need to focus on paying us our money, and you're gonna pay what you owe, like Riley said from Boondocks. And we're gonna keep giving it to you till you do.
And so she plugged her stuff in talking about Jennifer Brown Consulting, like diversity, inclusion, equity. Like, y'all, I mean, that's a POC expert. It's a bullshitter. Ma'am, just please, just like, I don't know, go in the trash can like Oscar the Grouch.
I'm still annoyed that Biden gets to like write off his failures to the Black community. Like, that shit is just okay. Like, and it all started with him yelling at those quote unquote Black leaders. Your average Negro has no idea who you are, by the way. That's a problem on you if you're a Black leader. But When Biden was yelling at those black leaders talking about, I'm not going to be able to do what's not in the Constitution, all that bullshit, that's where he started. And every single time he has failed us. Every time.
I think it's
Asia got a hate
crazy.
crime deal, we didn't. My bad, bud. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add on to what you're saying. I think it's crazy that they were asking Biden to do the executive order that he just did back then, and like he was screaming on them about like how he can't do shit for them, and then like after all this bullshit that goes down, like the a fucking massacre in Buffalo had to go down before he would actually fucking do the shit.
So I want to talk about policing and criminal justice, which is so important to our communities. And this is a set of issues that are very, very volatile and have to be handled carefully. Some of these issues can be handled, we believe, by legislation. Of course, we don't know what will happen in the Senate races in Georgia. And so it's hard to say. We have the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which everyone on this call among our groups worked on and that we think is so important. It's not clear that we have the votes for it, but you know, President-elect, that politics is not about simply saying there are this many Democrats and this many Republicans. The president has power. He has the bully pulpit. He has moral authority. And so we would ask you to lend your voice and your strength and your influence and your power and your ability to reach across the aisle to try and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. But failing that, we would ask you to pull from that act measures that can be enacted by executive order. You have the power to call for a national database on police misconduct. You have the power to ask for a registry that will allow people to easily search in public multiple misconduct complaints against particular officers. You have the ability to impose a database around police killings and police shootings. We know everything that happens to police officers because the FBI keeps a database, but we rely on the Washington Post to tell us how many people have been shot and killed by the police and what the racial breakdown is of those statistics. We need good data so that we can understand what is really happening around policing. And these are things that you can do by executive order. Most important and most overarching, Mr. President-elect, is the power that you have, and in fact, the obligation that you have under one of the most important civil rights statutes, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prevents the federal government from providing funding to any program that engages in discrimination. It was used originally, and in fact enacted, to compel school districts to comply with desegregation orders, recalcitrant school districts. But Title VI applies across the board to every program. It makes sense, right? The federal government should not be funding programs engaged in discrimination, but it has never been enforced against law enforcement. And I would ask that you would articulate clearly the indication, the intention of this administration to apply Title VI to every program. If you are a state or local program and you engage in discrimination, you cannot receive federal funds. What that means is that there needs to be created a kind of protocol for Title VI. And you could do this very easily for law enforcement. What do your diversity numbers look like? What do your stop and arrest numbers look like by race? What do your shooting numbers look like by race? Do you have implicit bias training? What have you done to remove white supremacists from your police departments? These are actions that you can take that indeed I would suggest you are compelled to take by Title VI, which requires the federal government to ensure that their programs, their money does not support programs that engage in discrimination.
Like, yo, they don't really give a fuck about us, honestly. That like, we have to come to terms with that shit, because like we literally have to fucking die before they actually give a fuck, or before they actually want to pretend like they give a fuck, give off the appearance to actually like that they actually give a fuck. This shit could have been done day one. Talking about he's gonna have our fucking back. And this shit is a joke. Like, honestly, he deserves all of this shit. Because he went in there cocky thinking, honestly, he is Trump. Like, they're the same person. Facts. He went in there thinking just it being him, it was going to magically work out. He didn't have to do anything. He was just going to show up and not be Trump. He was going to be Joe Biden. He was going to come in and save the fucking day. And he better, like, they're going to have to figure some shit out, because 2024 is going to be ugly if they don't turn this shit around.
I think that he also won because white people were so guilty that they just wanted the spotlight of racism off of them. But when he loses, it's not going to be like that anymore, because, you know, it's like white people don't really care about racism. They just don't want to be seen as racist, you know. But I don't even think they care about being seen as racist now. Like, and that's what Joe Biden did with a little, like, his little Trump era, and then Joe Biden to back it up. Now you can see it with the left. Like, they don't care. They don't care.
I was gonna say, like, the amount of times this guy's been allowed to fail, and people keep saying, well, you can't criticize. Yes, we can. He was never our guy to begin with, but we gave him a shot, and we got nothing. We got absolutely nothing. So when they bring out your lesser of two evils next time, I want you to remember this time. We got massacred in Buffalo. That's what our lesser of two evils got us.
That they're really not talking about. And when they do talk about it, like we said, they ain't saying black. Keep going, Joey.
He hired some black staffers. How'd that work out? Because black faces in high places. We got him in there. Okay, now what? Was that it? Was that our lesser of two evils? Is that what we sacrificed for? Because y'all told me my opinion didn't matter. Y'all told me that, like, the fact that this man has been an evil supervillain his entire career didn't matter. The fact that I told y'all this man is completely politically ineffectual. This guy doesn't do anything except for harm black people. That's the only thing he was ever good at. Remember this. The North remembers.
I know, you know, people are going to be like, well, he did Juneteenth. He did, you know, this. He got the